One evening, while scrolling through online forums dedicated to extraterrestrial encounters, Alex stumbled upon a term that caught their attention: meeting season. According to the posts, it was an annual event where various species gathered to exchange knowledge, resolve conflicts, and celebrate unity. Could that be what Sixer was preparing for? If so, why choose Maplewood Heights as the venue? Determined to find answers, Alex resolved to learn more, not just about Sixer, but about the possibilities beyond their small town. Little did they know, this decision would set off a chain of events far greater than they could ever imagine. For now, however, they simply watched as Sixer worked tirelessly under the fading light of the setting sun, their heart filled with wonder and anticipation. The days following Sixer's arrival passed in a blur for Alex. Each morning, they woke up with a sense of purpose they hadn't felt in years. The alien visitor had ignited a spark within them, a curiosity and excitement that overshadowed even their wildest dreams of space exploration. While the rest of Maplewood Heights remained divided over Sixer's presence, Alex found themselves drawn closer to their extraterrestrial neighbor. One crisp afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through the trees, Alex decided it was time to make another attempt at communication. Armed with their trusty universal translation app and a notebook filled with hastily scribbled questions, they approached Mr. Jenkins' backyard once again. This time, however, they noticed something unusual. Sixer wasn't standing still or meditating like before. Instead, the alien was crouched near the edge of the yard, tinkering with what appeared to be gardening tools. At first glance, these weren't ordinary tools. They glowed faintly, emitting soft hums, as Sixer manipulated them with its multifaceted lens. Tiny tendrils extended from the devices, burrowing into the soil and leaving behind trails of shimmering particles that seemed to enhance the grass around them. Alex hesitated, unsure whether interrupting would be wise. But then Sixer paused, turning its glowing orbs toward them, almost as if inviting them closer. Taking a deep breath, Alex stepped forward cautiously. "Hi," they said, their voice trembling slightly despite their resolve. "Can I talk to you?" Sixer tilted its head, studying Alex with an expression that might have been curiosity, or perhaps amusement. Either way, it set down the glowing tool and raised one of its slender limbs in greeting. Encouraged, Alex pulled out their phone and opened the translation app. Typing carefully, they asked, "What are you doing?" The app emitted a series of chirps and clicks, and after a moment, Sixer responded. Its melodic tone translated into English on the screen. "Preparing grounds." Alex frowned, trying to make sense of the vague response. "For what?" they typed next. This time, Sixer hesitated before replying. "Meeting season approaches." "Meeting season," Alex echoed aloud, excitement bubbling inside them. So their theory had been right. But what exactly did that mean? Before they could ask more, Sixer added cryptically, "Complications arise." Complications. Alex wanted to press further, but Sixer seemed distracted now, focusing back on the glowing tools. Reluctantly, they decided not to push their luck. Instead, they watched silently as Sixer worked, marveling at the precision and care it put into every movement. It was clear this wasn't just some casual project. It was important, maybe even critical. Back home later that evening, Alex couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. Who were these complications? And why would aliens need meetings anyway? Humans held conferences all the time. But surely interstellar gatherings must involve far greater stakes. As they scrolled through online forums again, searching for clues, they stumbled upon mentions of tensions among certain factions during meeting seasons past. Apparently, not all species got along, and disagreements sometimes escalated into outright conflict. Meanwhile, tension was brewing in Maplewood Heights as well. Barry Hargrove, the town conspiracy theorist, had taken it upon himself to rally opposition against Sixer. Standing atop a makeshift stage in the park, he waved flyers printed with bold headlines like "Aliens Among Us" and "Protect Our Planet." His speeches grew increasingly dramatic, painting Zixer as part of a sinister plot to invade Earth. Though many dismissed him as paranoid, his words struck a chord with some residents, especially those who were already uneasy about having an alien in their midst. Local authorities tried to calm the situation, reminding everyone that Zixer had shown no signs of hostility. But Barry's influence spread quickly, fueled by fear and misinformation. By the end of the week, protests erupted outside Mr. Jenkins' property, with angry voices shouting demands for answers and action. Amidst the chaos, Alex felt torn. On one hand, they understood people's concerns. Aliens were unknown, unpredictable, and undeniably intimidating. On the other hand, they couldn't ignore how peaceful Zixer had been so far, or the fact that it had trusted them enough to share fragments of information about meeting season. Something told Alex that Zixer wasn't here to cause trouble, but proving that to others wouldn't be easy. Determined to help, Alex returned to Zixer's yard the next day. This time, they'd brought gifts. A thermos of hot cocoa. They weren't sure if aliens drank anything, but it seemed like a friendly gesture, and a sketchpad filled with drawings of Earth landscapes. When Zixer saw them approaching, it stopped working and turned its glowing orbs toward them once more. "I brought you something," Alex said nervously, holding out the thermos and sketchpad. "I thought you might like." "Well, I don't know if you'll understand, but..." To their surprise, Zixer reached out with one of its delicate limbs, brushing against the items gently. A low hum emanated from the alien, accompanied by a warm glow that seemed almost appreciative. Then, using the translation app, Alex ventured another question. "Do you need help?" Zixer hesitated, its body pulsing faintly as if considering the offer. Finally, it replied, "Assistance appreciated." Relief washed over Alex. For the first time, they felt truly useful, not just as a curious bystander, but as someone capable of making a difference. Over the next few hours, they stayed by Zixer's side, helping wherever they could. Sometimes it was as simple as fetching materials or observing patterns in the glowing tools. Other times, Zixer would pause mid-task and gesture for Alex to take notes, explaining concepts that the translation app struggled to convey fully. By sunset, Alex realized they'd learned more about Zixer, and possibly the universe, than they ever imagined possible. Yet there was still so much left unanswered. What exactly was meeting season? Why had Zixer chosen Maplewood Heights? And most importantly, what role would humanity play in all of this? As they walked home under the stars, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into something much bigger than themselves. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would test not only their courage, but also their ability to bridge two vastly different worlds. As the days turned into weeks, Zixer's backyard transformed into something straight out of a science fiction novel, or perhaps a dream. Alex watched in awe as the alien worked tirelessly, shaping its temporary home into what could only be described as a masterpiece of interstellar engineering. The once ordinary patch of grass was now alive with glowing structures, floating platforms, and shimmering pathways that seemed to defy gravity itself. Each day brought new changes, and Alex made it a point to visit whenever they could. Sometimes they helped carry materials or held tools steady while Zixer manipulated them with precision beyond human capability. Other times, they simply observed, taking mental notes of every detail. It wasn't long before Alex realized that each structure served a specific purpose, tailored not just for aesthetics, but for functionality. Some emitted soft pulsating lights that mimicked starlight, while others hummed with soothing frequencies that resonated through the air like an invisible melody. One particularly fascinating creation appeared to be made entirely of liquid metal, shifting and flowing seamlessly as if alive. "What are these for?" Alex asked one afternoon, pointing to a cluster of smaller domes scattered across the yard. They had typed the question into their translation app, which chirped and whistled in response. Zixer paused, tilting its head thoughtfully before replying. "Habitats. The app translated. For delegates. Delegates, Alex repeated, excitement bubbling inside them. You mean other aliens? The alien nodded slowly, its glowing orbs flickering faintly. Many species attend meeting season. Each requires unique environment. Alex's mind raced at the implications. How many different types of aliens would come? What would they look like? Would any of them resemble humans, or would they all be as extraordinary as Zixur? Questions poured out faster than they could type them into the app, but Zixur didn't seem bothered by their enthusiasm. Instead, it gestured toward one of the larger structures, a towering spire that pulsed with vibrant colors, and explained further. Central hub, it said. For discussions, resolutions, unity. It sounded simple enough, but Alex couldn't ignore the undertone in Zixur's voice, or rather, its toneless translation. There was something unspoken, something weighing on the alien's mind. Recalling Zixur's earlier mention of complications, Alex decided to probe gently. Are there problems this year? They typed carefully, unsure how much information Zixur would share. For a moment, the alien remained silent, its translucent body shimmering faintly as if lost in thought. Then, finally, it spoke. Tensions rise. Null Collective opposes collaboration. The Null Collective. Alex echoed, jotting down the name in their notebook. They'd never heard of it before, but based on the way Zixur's bioluminescent skin dimmed slightly when mentioning it, it clearly wasn't good news. Zixur elaborated hesitantly, its melodic tones translating into fragmented sentences. Faction resistant to change. Hoard resources. Disrupt harmony. Alex frowned, trying to piece together the fragments of information. From what they understood, the Null Collective represented a group of species, or perhaps individuals who were against working together. Maybe they saw cooperation as a threat to their power, or believed that sharing resources weakened them somehow. Whatever their reasons, their presence cast a shadow over what should have been a celebration of unity. Despite the ominous warning, Alex felt determined to help however they could. If tensions were high among the delegates, then preparation was key. Every structure needed to be perfect, every detail accounted for. And though they weren't an expert in interstellar diplomacy, Alex knew they could contribute in their own way, by ensuring everything ran smoothly behind the scenes. Over the next few days, Alex threw themselves fully into assisting Zixur. They studied the layouts of the habitats, learning which ones required adjustments for temperature, light, or sound. They tested the stability of the floating platforms, making sure they wouldn't collapse under pressure. They even helped program a series of holographic displays designed to welcome visitors in multiple languages, or at least what passed for languages among alien species. Through it all, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were part of something monumental. These preparations weren't just about hosting a meeting. They were about bridging gaps between civilizations, fostering understanding, and maybe, just maybe, securing humanity's place among the stars. But as the arrival date drew closer, doubts began creeping in. Could they really handle such responsibility? What if something went wrong? What if the Null Collective caused trouble, or worse, targeted Earth because of its involvement? One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Alex voiced their concerns to Zixur. Sitting cross-legged on the grass beside the alien, they typed into the app, "What happens if things don't go well?" Zixur regarded them quietly for a moment, its glowing orbs softening slightly. "Uncertainty exists," it replied, "but hope persists." Hope. The word lingered in Alex's mind long after they returned home that night. Hope for peace, for progress, for a future where humans and aliens could coexist. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was possible, and that alone was worth fighting for. By the end of the week, Maplewood Heights buzzed with anticipation. Rumors spread like wildfire about the upcoming event, fueled by glimpses of Zixur's glowing backyard and Barry Hargrove's increasingly frantic protests. Some residents grew excited, eager to witness history firsthand. Others remained wary, clinging to fear of the unknown. But amidst the chaos, Alex stood firm, ready to face whatever came next. The night before the delegates were set to arrive, Alex barely slept. Their mind raced with questions and scenarios, each one more overwhelming than the last. What would the aliens look like? How would they behave? Would humanity's presence, even in the form of a single curious teenager, be accepted or rejected outright? These thoughts swirled endlessly as they tossed and turned under the covers. When morning finally came, the air felt electric, charged with anticipation. Zixer had spent the entire night making final adjustments to the glowing structures in its backyard. By sunrise, the area resembled nothing less than an interstellar embassy, complete with shimmering domes, floating platforms, and pathways that hummed softly beneath your feet. As Alex approached, they noticed something new: a massive archway at the entrance of the yard, pulsating with iridescent light. It looked ceremonial, almost like a gateway welcoming visitors from another world. "Is this for them?" Alex asked, pointing to the archway after typing their question into the translation app. Zixer nodded, its translucent skin glowing brighter than usual. "Symbol of unity," it replied. "Marks beginning of meeting season." Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This wasn't just some random event. It was a tradition, steeped in meaning and purpose. Despite the looming tensions Zixer had mentioned earlier, there was still beauty in the idea of bringing so many different beings together. For a moment, Alex allowed themselves to imagine what it might be like if humans could participate fully, not just as observers, but as equals. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the first signs of arrival began. A low rumble echoed through the air, growing louder until it became unmistakable. The sound of engines, or perhaps something far more advanced, descending from above. Within moments, ships of all shapes and sizes appeared in the sky over Maplewood Heights. Some were sleek and metallic, gliding silently like birds of prey. Others were bulbous and organic-looking, pulsating faintly as if alive. One ship even seemed to dissolve into thin air before reappearing closer to the ground, leaving behind trails of sparkling particles. Alex watched wide-eyed as the vessels landed gracefully in designated areas around Zixer's property. Each one opened to reveal its passengers, and what emerged left no doubt that Earth had officially entered the realm of the extraordinary. The first group consisted of insectoid creatures, their elongated bodies covered in iridescent exoskeletons that shimmered like gemstones. They moved with precision, communicating through rapid clicks and chirps that resonated in ways both melodic and unsettling. Next came gelatinous entities, amorphous blobs that shifted colors and patterns across their surfaces to express emotion. Then there were towering quadrupeds with crystalline horns, their movements slow but deliberate, exuding an aura of ancient wisdom. Each species headed toward its assigned habitat without hesitation, guided by subtle signals emitted from the structures. Alex marveled at how seamlessly everything functioned, the result of countless hours of preparation by Zixer and to a lesser extent themselves. Yet despite the efficiency, not everything went smoothly. Trouble arose almost immediately during introductions. Two rival factions, one represented by a trio of serpentine beings with scales that refracted light like prisms, and the other by a cluster of spindly, spider-like creatures, nearly came to blows over territorial disputes. Voices rose, not human voices, but sounds that ranged from guttural growls to high-pitched screeches. The atmosphere grew tense, and several nearby delegates backed away nervously. Seeing the potential for disaster, Alex sprang into action. Though they weren't part of the official proceedings, they couldn't stand idly by while conflict erupted. Thinking quickly, they grabbed a small device Zixer had been using to adjust the habitat settings and aimed it at the arguing groups. With a flick of a switch, the device emitted a burst of colorful holograms depicting Earth landmarks: the Grand Canyon, the Eiffel Tower, Mount Everest. At first, the gesture seemed absurd. How could images of Earth possibly diffuse an interstellar argument? But to everyone's surprise, it worked. The serpentine beings paused mid-hiss, tilting their heads curiously at the hologram of Niagara Falls. The spider-like creatures clicked excitedly, extending one of their limbs toward the image of the Great Wall of China. Slowly, the tension dissipated, replaced by cautious curiosity. Zixer, who had been observing quietly from the sidelines, approached Alex afterward. Its glowing orbs pulsed warmly, almost like a smile. "Clever solution," it said through the translation app. "You understand diplomacy." Alex blushed, embarrassed by the praise. "I just didn't want anyone fighting," they admitted. Besides, showing off Earth seemed like a good way to break the ice. Their quick thinking earned them more than just Zixer's gratitude. It also drew attention from unexpected quarters. Members of the Null Collective, a shadowy faction whose members wore dark cloaks that obscured their features, lingered near the edges of the gathering. Unlike the other delegates, they made no effort to interact or explore. Instead, they observed silently, their presence heavy with unspoken judgment. One of them approached Alex later that evening, materializing out of the crowd like a ghost. Up close, Alex realized the figure wasn't wearing a cloak at all. Its body was naturally shrouded in swirling tendrils of smoke-like energy. Its voice, when it spoke, was cold and mechanical, translated by the app as human involvement. Intriguing. Alex swallowed hard, unsure whether to take the comment as a compliment or a threat. Before they could respond, Zixer intervened, positioning itself protectively between Alex and the enigmatic figure. The Null Collective member hesitated briefly before retreating back into the shadows, leaving Alex shaken but determined. By the end of the day, exhaustion weighed heavily on Alex's shoulders. Hosting such a diverse assembly required constant vigilance, creativity, and patience. Conflicts needed mediating, cultural sensitivities had to be respected, and misunderstandings often arose from the simplest miscommunications. Yet, despite the challenges, Alex felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They were helping create something truly remarkable, a bridge between worlds. As twilight descended, casting long shadows across the glowing backyard, Alex sat down beside Zixer, gazing up at the stars. Somewhere out there lay countless planets, civilizations, and possibilities. And here, in this small corner of Earth, humanity had taken its first step toward joining them. Little did Alex know, the hardest tests were yet to come. The second day of meeting season dawned bright and clear, but the calm skies belied the growing storm beneath them. While the delegates had settled into their respective habitats, the fragile peace Alex and Zixer had worked so hard to maintain began to crack under mounting pressures. Conversations that should have been collaborative turned contentious, and old grudges simmered just below the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Alex woke early, determined to stay ahead of potential issues. They grabbed a quick breakfast before heading over to Zixer's backyard, where they found the alien already hard at work. Its translucent skin pulsed faintly with stress, or what Alex interpreted as stress, its movements sharper and more deliberate than usual. When Alex approached, Zixer acknowledged them with a brief nod, its glowing orbs dimmed slightly. "Challenges increase," it said through the translation app. "Null Collective grows bolder." "What do you mean?" Alex asked, concern creeping into their voice. "Are they causing trouble?" Zixer hesitated before replying. "They spread dissent, question unity, demand concessions." Alex frowned, processing the vague explanation. From what they understood, the Null Collective wasn't just opposed to collaboration. They actively sought to undermine it. Their presence cast a pall over the entire gathering, making cooperation feel like an uphill battle. Worse still, their influence seemed to be spreading among other delegates, sowing seeds of doubt and division. As the morning unfolded, tensions escalated. During a discussion about resource allocation, a topic crucial to many species' survival, arguments broke out between factions vying for access to rare materials. The serpentine beings, who relied on crystalline structures for energy, clashed loudly with the gelatinous entities, whose ecosystems depended on liquid minerals. Voices rose in cacophony, blending clicks, hums, and screeches into a chaotic symphony of discord. Alex tried to intervene, using humor and quick thinking to redirect attention away from heated exchanges. At one point, they mimicked exaggerated gestures inspired by Earth diplomats they'd seen on TV, eliciting amused reactions from some of the more lighthearted delegates. But not everyone was swayed. The Null Collective remained aloof, their shadowy figures lingering ominously at the edges of the central hub. Back in town, Barry Hargrove seized upon the chaos to fuel his anti-alien campaign. Armed with megaphones and flyers, he led protests outside Mr. Jenkins' property, shouting accusations that the aliens were planning to drain Earth's resources. His rhetoric grew increasingly inflammatory, drawing larger crowds and amplifying fear among residents. Some people joined the demonstrations willingly, while others attended out of curiosity or peer pressure. Even those who didn't believe Barry's claims couldn't ignore the spectacle unfolding before their eyes. Local authorities struggled to keep order, caught between calming human fears and respecting the autonomy of Sixer's event. Sheriff Miller, a pragmatic man who prided himself on fairness, attempted to mediate by organizing community meetings aimed at addressing concerns. But Barry's charisma proved difficult to counter, and tensions in Maplewood Heights reached a breaking point. Caught in the middle of it all, Alex felt torn. On one hand, they wanted to defend Zixer and the other delegates, explaining that the aliens weren't here to harm anyone. On the other hand, they understood why people were afraid. It wasn't every day that your quiet suburban town became ground zero for interstellar diplomacy. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on their shoulders, leaving them unsure how much longer they could hold everything together. One evening, after another exhausting day of conflict resolution, Alex overheard a private conversation between Zixer and another delegate, a towering quadruped with crystalline horns. Curiosity got the better of them, and they crept closer, careful not to interrupt. Through the translation app, fragments of dialogue filtered through. "Humans must know," the quadruped rumbled, its deep tones resonating like distant thunder. "Too soon," Zixer replied firmly. "Risk outweighs reward." Alex's heart skipped a beat. What did they mean? Was there something about humanity's role in all this that Zixer hadn't shared yet? Feeling betrayed, Alex confronted the alien later that night, their emotions spilling over. "You've been keeping secrets," they accused, trying, and failing, to keep their voice steady. "What are you hiding?" Zixer regarded them silently for a moment, its glowing orbs flickering faintly. Then, with a sigh-like hum, it spoke. "Decisions loom. Humanity's inclusion." Debated. "Inclusion?" Alex echoed, stunned. "You mean whether we're allowed to join the galactic community?" Zixer nodded slowly. "Not my choice alone. Many factors weigh." Anger surged within Alex, followed quickly by hurt. All this time, they had poured their energy into helping prepare for meeting season, believing they were part of something hopeful and inclusive. Now they realized they might have been nothing more than an observer on the sidelines, excluded from decisions that could shape Earth's future. "How could you not tell me?" they demanded, their voice cracking slightly. "Don't I deserve to know?" Zixer's bioluminescent skin dimmed further, almost apologetically. "Burden heavy. Did not wish to burden you further." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched taut, filled with unspoken thoughts and emotions. Finally, Alex exhaled sharply, forcing themselves to calm down. As much as they wanted to be angry, they knew Zixer hadn't acted out of malice. It was simply carrying the weight of leadership, a responsibility far greater than anything Alex had ever faced. "I want to help," they said quietly, determination replacing frustration. "Whatever happens next, I'm in this with you." Zixer's glowing orbs brightened slightly, a gesture Alex took as gratitude. Together, they returned to the task at hand, knowing full well that the hardest tests were yet to come. Outside, Barry's protests continued, echoing through the night air like a grim reminder of the challenges ahead. Inside Zixer's glowing backyard, however, hope persisted, a fragile flame burning against the darkness. The third day of meeting season began with an eerie calm, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. Alex woke early, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and adrenaline coursing through their veins. The events of the past 2 days weighed heavily on them. Arguments among delegates, Barry's escalating protests, and Zixer's guarded confession about humanity's uncertain future, but they pushed those thoughts aside. Today would be different, they told themselves. Today, they would focus on finding solutions rather than dwelling on problems. By mid-morning, the central hub buzzed with activity. Delegates gathered around holographic displays, discussing proposals for resource-sharing agreements and conflict resolution frameworks. While some species collaborated enthusiastically, others remained aloof or outright hostile. The Null Collective lingered at the fringes, their shadowy forms casting long silhouettes across the glowing pathways. Every so often, one of them would murmur something inaudible to another, their words translated by the app only as cryptic phrases like "resistance grows" or "unity weakens." Alex did their best to stay busy, assisting Zixer with last-minute adjustments to the habitats and helping mediate minor disputes between delegates. Their knack for quick thinking and humor continued to serve them well, diffusing tense moments before they could spiral out of control. But despite their efforts, the underlying tension never fully dissipated. It hung thick in the air, palpable and suffocating. Then, just after noon, disaster struck. It started with a faint hissing sound, barely noticeable over the hum of the floating platforms. At first, no one paid much attention, until a sudden burst of energy erupted from one of the habitats meant for gelatinous entities. The dome shuddered violently, its shimmering surface cracking open like an eggshell. A volatile mist spilled out, swirling chaotically and spreading rapidly across the yard. Within seconds, alarms blared throughout the area, drowning out all other sounds. Panic erupted instantly. Delegates scrambled in every direction, some retreating to safer zones while others rushed toward the source of the disturbance, trying to contain it. The gelatinous beings responsible for the habitat floated frantically nearby, their colorful patterns shifting erratically in distress. Through the chaos, Alex caught snippets of their frantic communication, translated into fragmented sentences. Containment failure. Energy unstable. Zixover sprang into action, its translucent body glowing brighter than ever as it directed others to evacuate the immediate vicinity. Alex hesitated for only a moment before joining in, grabbing a handheld device Zixer had been using earlier to monitor environmental conditions. As they scanned the area, they realized the situation was far worse than they'd initially thought. The energy leaking from the damaged habitat wasn't just volatile. It was destabilizing the surrounding structures, threatening to trigger a chain reaction that could endanger both aliens and humans alike. "We need to stop it," Alex shouted over the din, turning to Zixer. "What can we do?" Zixer paused, its glowing orbs flickering rapidly, as if processing options. Finally, it gestured toward one of its gardening tools, the same ones Alex had seen during their first visit. "Stabilize field," it instructed urgently, "but requires precision." Without hesitation, Alex grabbed the tool and followed Zixer closer to the breach. Heat radiated from the cracked dome, making the air shimmer unnaturally. Each step felt heavier than the last, but Alex forced themselves to keep moving. They couldn't let fear take over, not now, when so much was at stake. As they reached the edge of the habitat, Zixer explained quickly how to use the tool. It functioned almost like a tuning fork, capable of recalibrating energy fields, but only if wielded correctly. One wrong move could make the situation exponentially worse. With trembling hands, Alex adjusted the settings, aiming the device at the swirling mist. The tool emitted a low hum, sensing with the chaotic frequencies emanating from the breach. For several agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly but surely, the mist began to settle. Its wild movements slowed, becoming more controlled as the tool stabilized the energy field. Encouraged, Alex adjusted the frequency again, focusing intently on maintaining balance. Sweat dripped down their forehead, and their arms ached from holding the device steady. But they refused to give up. Behind them, Zixer coordinated with other delegates, reinforcing the barrier around the affected area to prevent further damage. Together, human and alien worked seamlessly, united by a shared goal: survival. Finally, after what felt like hours, the crisis passed. The mist dissipated entirely, leaving behind only a faint shimmer in the air. The cracked dome sealed itself automatically, its self-repair mechanisms kicking in once the threat had subsided. Exhausted but triumphant, Alex lowered the tool, their legs buckling slightly beneath them. Zixer approached immediately, its glowing orbs pulsating warmly. "You saved us," it said simply, its melodic tone translating into heartfelt gratitude. "Thank you." Word of Alex's heroics spread quickly among the delegates. Even members of the Null Collective, who had previously dismissed humanity as irrelevant, seemed impressed by their ingenuity and bravery. One of them approached cautiously, its shadowy form less intimidating now. Through the translation app, it offered a single word: respect. Back in Maplewood Heights, news of the near disaster reached the townsfolk. Sheriff Miller addressed the crowd gathered outside Mr. Jenkins' property, explaining what had happened and emphasizing the role Alex played in averting catastrophe. Barry Hargrove tried to spin the story into yet another conspiracy theory, but his words fell flat this time. Witnessing firsthand the risks and rewards of interstellar cooperation left many residents reconsidering their stance. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, the delegates convened for an emergency meeting. What might have been a divisive session turned into an opportunity for unity. Inspired by Alex's actions, several species agreed to set aside old grievances and work together toward lasting solutions. Even the Null Collective softened its position, agreeing to table their demands for now. When the meeting concluded, Zixer sought out Alex once more. Standing beneath the glowing archway that marked the beginning of meeting season, it spoke softly. "Your actions prove humanity's potential," it said. "Not perfect, but willing to learn, willing to help." Tears welled up in Alex's eyes, but they blinked them away, smiling faintly. "Does this mean we're accepted?" they asked tentatively. Zixer tilted its head thoughtfully. "Provisional recommendation made. Final decision rests with Council." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was hope, and right now, that was enough. The final day of meeting season dawned with a sense of anticipation that hung thick in the crisp autumn air. After days filled with tension, conflict, and near disaster, the mood had shifted, transformed by resilience, cooperation, and unexpected acts of courage. For Alex Carter, it felt surreal to stand amidst such extraordinary beings and witness firsthand how humanity's smallest efforts could ripple outward, touching even the farthest corners of the galaxy. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light over Zixer's glowing backyard, preparations for the closing ceremony began. The delegates moved about purposefully, their earlier animosities softened by shared experiences. Even the Null Collective seemed less imposing now, their shadowy forms blending quietly into the crowd rather than looming ominously at its edges. It was as if the crisis they'd all faced together had forged an unspoken bond, a fragile but hopeful connection that transcended species, languages, and worlds. Alex watched from the sidelines, feeling equal parts pride and awe. They still couldn't quite believe everything that had happened. The arguments they'd mediated, the energy field they'd stabilized, the respect they'd earned from beings who once saw them as insignificant. Yet here they were, standing shoulder to shoulder with interstellar diplomats, ready to celebrate unity despite their differences. Zixer approached them just as the first notes of music began to play. Unlike Earth instruments, these melodies came not from strings or keys, but from resonant hums and shimmering lights created by the delegates themselves. Each species contributed something unique. The serpentine beings added sharp, crystalline tones. The gelatinous entities infused soft, flowing harmonies. Even the towering quadrupeds joined in with deep, rhythmic vibrations. Together, they wove a symphony unlike anything Alex had ever heard. Beautiful, haunting, and alive with meaning. Ready? Zixer asked through the translation app, its glowing orbs pulsating warmly. Alex nodded, though nerves fluttered in their chest. What happens now? Final speeches, Zixer replied. Then celebration. With that, the alien gestured toward the central hub, where a platform floated gently above the ground. One by one, representatives from each faction stepped forward to address the assembly. Some spoke passionately about the importance of collaboration, while others acknowledged past mistakes and pledged to do better. When it was Zixer's turn, the alien turned its glowing orbs toward Alex, inviting them to join on stage. Heart pounding, Alex hesitated. Me? Why me? Your actions speak louder than words, Zixer explained simply. Humans deserve voice. Swallowing hard, Alex climbed onto the platform beside Zixer. As they looked out at the gathered delegates, all shapes, sizes, and colors blending seamlessly under the iridescent glow, they realized this moment wasn't just about them. It was about humanity. About proving that even a small-town kid from Maplewood Heights could make a difference when given the chance. Taking a deep breath, Alex typed into the translation app, "Thank you for letting us be part of this. We may not have advanced technology or centuries of experience like you, but we're willing to learn, to grow, to work together." Their words translated into melodic tones that echoed across the yard, earning nods of approval from many delegates. When the speech concluded, applause erupted, not clapping, exactly, but a chorus of clicks, whistles, and resonant hums that vibrated through the air like waves of gratitude. Afterward, the celebration began in earnest. Fireworks lit up the sky alongside bursts of cosmic displays created by the delegates themselves. Streams of light danced across the heavens, painting constellations that told stories older than time. Back on the ground, Earth traditions mingled with alien customs. Music played, food, both familiar and utterly bizarre, was shared, and laughter, universal in its joy, filled the night. Barry Hargrove and his followers lingered briefly near the edge of the property, watching silently as the festivities unfolded. But without the chaos of protests or conspiracies to fuel their anger, their presence felt hollow. Eventually, they drifted away, leaving behind only faint echoes of discontent. For Alex, the evening passed in a blur of wonder and emotion. Delegates approached them one by one, offering gestures of thanks or curiosity. Some exchanged gifts, intricate carvings, glowing crystals, or even small devices whose purposes remained mysterious. Others simply bowed or tilted their heads in acknowledgement, their body language conveying respect far beyond words. As midnight approached, Zixer pulled Alex aside for a private moment beneath the glowing archway. Its translucent skin shimmered softly, almost as if reflecting the stars above. "Time comes for departure," it said gently, "but connection remains." Alex's throat tightened. "You're leaving." "Duty's call," Zixer replied. "But promise kept. Communication continues. Humanity recommended for provisional membership. First step among stars." Tears welled up in Alex's eyes, but they smiled through them. "Thank you for trusting me, for showing me what's possible." Zixer extended one of its slender limbs, brushing against Alex's hand lightly. "Hope persists," it said, before turning and gliding back toward its ship. Moments later, the spacecraft ascended silently into the sky, disappearing into the vast expanse of space. Though sadness tugged at Alex's heart, they felt no regret. Instead, they carried a profound sense of hope, not just for themselves, but for the future of humanity. Back home, life in Maplewood Heights slowly returned to normal. Neighbors resumed their routines, various protests faded into obscurity, and Mr. Jenkins' backyard reverted to its quiet charm. But memories of meeting season lingered, etched into the fabric of the town forever. For Alex, the experience changed everything. They no longer dreamed of exploring the stars alone. They envisioned humanity stepping boldly into the cosmos, hand in hand with countless other species. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, they knew one truth beyond doubt. The journey had only just begun. Standing on their porch one last time, Alex gazed up at the stars, imagining Zixer somewhere out there among them. Someday, they promised themselves, humanity would join them, not as outsiders, but as equals. Until then, they would hold on to hope, nurturing it like a flame against the darkness.